Psalm 46 is a psalm that's all about confidence, but not self-confidence. It's actually the opposite of that. In fact, the psalmist wants to point you immediately to where his confidence is found, and it's in the first word of this psalm, in God. And for two reasons: because God is his refuge and his strength. A refuge, this idea of being a sheltered place, the cave, the cove that can protect you from the storm. And strength, this idea that he's able to defend you. And in fact, the psalm pictures kind of a God who's got power both over his creation and his creatures. So when nature and creation is raging, God is the safe refuge. And when humanity is forcing itself against you, God is the great strength and the great defender. And that's how the psalm breaks itself up. Verses 1 to 3, when creation rages, God is a refuge. Verses 4 to 7, when mankind, humanity, pushes against God and rages, God defends. And then in verses 8 through to 11 is an invitation to come and see the options and to listen and to maybe quieten down a bit and recognise who God is. So let's look at this psalm together. As it begins in verses 1 to 3, nature is raging, and the psalmist says, God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Even though we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. All of it's chaos. And the psalmist is saying, well, if God's the one who made this, and if he's the refuge and the strength, then it's illogical to fear. And yet, look at the chaos that's there. But then in the midst of that, see that the psalmist is saying, God is permanent in his protection. He is very present, or he's never absent, always there, and therefore fear not. And I wonder if we think whether or not God has the capacity to carry us at times when it feels like the world is falling apart around us. And the picture's really graphic, isn't it? The mountains, those geographical masses that are so permanent and unmovable and impregnable and immutable, well, they've lost their balance and they've fallen into the sea. And the waters, they're whipping up and threatening. They stare you down and bellow at you. And as they roar, they're not all just noise. They're causing the whole of the nature around them to quake and shake. But when nature rages, no need to fear, for God is ever present, his strength, he's the refuge. When worst is at its worst, God is the best place to have your confidence. That's verses 1 to 3. Then in verses 4 to 7, what happens though if it's people that are pushing out against you? And it's the picture now of God in his city, and it's under siege. It's not actually too dissimilar to a scene that you find Jerusalem experiencing under the reign of Hezekiah when he's the king of Judah. Sennacherib, who's the king of Assyria, is bearing down on Judah. Judah's made an alliance with Egypt. Will they be able to survive? Well, here come the Assyrians. They've just attacked 42 of their cities that have all been fortified, and now they've locked they've locked Judah in Jerusalem, blocked off the water supply, and they want to overthrow the city. And so the call is that they might give up. But Israel won't give up. In fact, they refuse and indicate that they're going to trust their God. You can read about this in Isaiah 36, starting in verse 4. And there's a commander who says, on what basis are you basing this confidence of yours? The answer? Well, they are God's people, in God's city, in the place where God dwells. And if Sennacherib wants to overthrow the city, he's going to have to overthrow their God. And he won't be able to do that. See, they might be under siege, but they're not cut off from God. And they're not cut off from God's provision. There's a life-giving stream that God has provided for them in the city. They can stay held up there indefinitely, eternally. So read Psalm 46 verses 4 to 7. There is a river whose stream makes glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice and the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And indeed, Jerusalem doesn't fall. At break of day, she's helped. You can read about that in Isaiah 37, verses 36 following. Humanity might rage against God, but God's in control. Verse 7 is the reminder of the basis of that security. That the Lord is the one who is almighty. That's our strength. The God of Jacob, this God of promise who keeps his promise, will defend. And verses 8 to 11, there's this invitation to come and see this God who reigns. And to see what happens if you stand in opposition to God. Those who place their confidence in themselves, that self-confidence. Look at verse 8. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and he shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So come, he says. See the desolations and the judgments that he's brought down. In verse 9, he does bring peace. See, all the weapons become useless because he's not soft on his enemies. He brings judgment, and then hear that booming voice that comes. Be still. It's a big rebuke. It says, shush, listen. It's reminiscent of Jesus in the boat before the waves. Be quiet and know that I am God. They're words of comfort and life as well, aren't they? We're prone to feel harassed on every side, but be still, safe in the knowledge that God is God. See, on what are you basing your confidence? Is it in your own strength or your intelligence or your wealth or your personality? Do you think that you fight your battles on your own? And maybe you do. Do you feel like the world is in turmoil all around you? It's been set off to drift. Well, where is your refuge? Is it in running away and denying that there are problems? Is it in blocking them out by keeping busy and active all the time? Or shutting yourself in? Or drowning them out? Well, for us who stand this side of the cross, we have an even richer sense of confidence. It's a confidence that even death has been defeated. And God's people will never be overthrown. There is a fountain filled with blood. There is a river that runs, that washes clean and supplies all that we need, that we might never thirst again. Because God is our refuge and he's our strength and he's with us today. Praise his name. God bless.